Hello and welcome to Across the Pond WNBA. Can you believe it? We are hours from tip off, Michelle, for the new season.
I'm excited. I'm really excited. It's gonna be a great year, and I think there are gonna be a lot of surprises this year.
Yes, I
Not that we
think you're
haven't
right.
already had.
Well, we've had a few, especially this week. This week has been huge for news. It always is the kind of first kind of week leading up to the season starting. Um, Talking about preseason, last week we had Simona Constantini in Toronto covering the WNBA Canada game. Now we've spoke about Canada getting a team and all this kind of stuff. You're not sold on the idea with taxation and all the rest of it and up there because it's expensive. And I did look into it, and you were actually wrong. It's not 50%. It's like 53%. Um,
I need
that
my
3%
coins.
matters. So but Simona went up there, or she didn't go up there. She lives in Toronto anyway. But she was there. She went to the game, covered the game, and there was a lot that came from the press conferences, especially Kathy's. Kathy did her normal kind of preseason commissioners kind of press conference. And one thing Simona said, and Simona doesn't necessarily know Kathy that well. She's seen a couple of press conferences. That's kind of it when she was doing research. But one thing she said is when she was asked a question, she didn't answer just the question. She anticipated all the follow-up questions that were gonna come. So she would, like, stand there for an extra couple of minutes explaining
Mm.
why Toronto and, like, "Yes, we looked at 100 cities, we've narrowed it down to 20, then we narrowed it down to 10," and, like, she went through the whole process.
Yes.
And I think Simona, who worked in marketing and stuff before, she was like she really appreciated that because like a lot of these times you go to press conferences and they will literally just answer the question and nothing else. And you don't leave with anything. But Kathy very smartly, she knew she had the platform and she went for it.
I love that. I think it also makes everyone's jobs easier. It allows for you to take that extra time and answer some of the more fun questions as well, but also give the context behind how did we get to this decision. It showcases her leadership in terms of being a visionary thinker, understanding where the game is going. I also love and appreciate Kathy in terms of knowing that the league it's time for the league to expand, but understanding that if we don't have that strong foundation, it won't matter, and that we don't want to be in a position of having to have teams fold or move later on. So I think what you just explained is just how strategic she has been and looking at every piece on that chessboard to ensure that when we do expand, we do it the right way and that people understand how much thought went into that process.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I listened to the full thing, and it was like immense how much detail she was actually willing to go into. Because a lot of these times, a lot of these kind of people in those positions are like, they want to keep their cards to the chest. But no, she was very open, very transparent. And I think that's people appreciate that a lot more now. We do live in an age of fake news.
Mhm.
So I think when someone is transparent and open and honest, like we appreciate it that much more now. So WNBA Canada was awesome. Great game. First quarter maybe a little slow. Rest of the game was absolutely awesome. I really enjoyed it, and it was shown on League Pass for free for everyone. So it wasn't as if you had to have the subscription or anything, which I thought was a nice marketing trick. Only
Yes.
thing I would say is let's get that marketing out like a week ahead of that rather than like 2 days before. But again, WNBA marketing not the not the strongest. Now we did get some bad news this week. Sadly, Las Vegas Aces. We knew they were under investigation. A complaint had been made by a player. We know that was Derek Hamby because she was traded, and, and then suddenly there was an investigation. So you put two and two together. And it was Derek Hamby, and what we got was quite a surprise because we got a suspension handed down to Becky Hammond, the coach of the Las Vegas Aces. This this has got to be a blow. Now, Becky has has come out with a statement and said, this move, this trade was done for business reasons. But it's a weird thing, and it's something that obviously men don't have to go through because we don't fall pregnant, thankfully. It hurts way too much. I've seen it happen 3
We
times.
wish you did, though.
Oh, I know. But, like, so obviously we wouldn't have this in the NBA, but in the WNBA, we have a number of women pregnant at the moment. We have had Derica, we have Skylar Diggins Smith, and Katie Lou Samuelson as well, is also pregnant. So, like, we have this happen, and players are going to miss time. Um, I think Nafisa Collier is just coming back as well, and it's like you need your time. You need time for your body to kind of heal itself, and then you can like get back up to full speed. But pregnancy is part and parcel of the WNBA and something that we should be used to by now. So I was kind of surprised that this has all come about because I would have expected this to have just been, all right, yeah, you're pregnant, off you go maternity leave, and we'll see when you come back. But they went down the route of trading her. Now, the only thing I will say in the Aces' defense is as soon as Derica was traded, there was then an announcement that Candice Parker was in. And you couldn't have had Derica Hamby and Candice Parker because of salaries and all the rest of it. So, on the outside looking in, as we are, it does kind of look like a business decision.
It's very interesting because following this story, I remember when it first leaked and Erica had the long letter that she posted on social media. There were so many nuances to the story, and you could tell from then until even right now with the handing down of the suspension that there are many things that are not gonna ever become public, not for the right reasons. I mean, it's a business, it's an organization that we have to protect. So I understand why everything will not come out, and it'll just become he say, she say. At the end of the day, I thought Derica, when she wrote her social media post, was very professional. Felt like the response from the Aces was the exact same. Will we ever know the truth? Probably not, but I think it's very important that fans and viewers who watch this understand something very important. When we say we should be in a better place with women and their rights and having the ability to have babies and children, we also have to remember that when we look across corporate America, it's the same thing. The landscape is the same regardless of whether it's basketball or a corporate job or any job for that matter. Women have to take off during those time periods for that bonding process and many other things to allow their body to heal. But you also have to look at it from the employer standpoint as well. It's that chessboard. You got to be able to sit on both sides. It's about money at the end of the day. And I'm not saying that Las Vegas was doing this. I'm just painting a picture of if it's about money at the end of the day and you do find out that pregnancies happen, people are always calculating and thinking, how do we adjust? How do we adapt? When you think about what we just talked about with Kathy, being a visionary and understanding that we have to account for these things that may arise, that's just smart leadership. At the same time, we do want to protect our players and women as a whole so that they have the ability to continue to, I mean, at the end of the day, you're creating the next generation. So it's, I think it's still a work in progress, and we're far from where we need to be in terms of making sure that we find a win win for both parties. And I feel like the one thing that did come out of the suspension and everything that happened, regardless of what came out, obviously they found something for them to hand down the suspension. And like you said, the timing of it just didn't make sense. At the end of the day, I think this is an organization that has led the way in terms of how we should move forward, how organizations should be run, how players should be treated. So I think we have to give them a ton of respect in that regard and understand that they're also a younger team and a younger franchise, and they're learning the way as well, and take it as a lesson learned. How they move forward will say a lot about Becky Hammond as well as the organization. Even with Derica, I think they've all handled it well. I've heard some of the comments around it. I thought the best comment came from one of the favorite aces, Asia Wilson. She didn't pick a side. She just understood that Derek is a former teammate. She's doing what's right for her, and the organization is doing the same. Let's move forward and learn from those lessons. And I think that's something that all of us can do.
Oh, for sure, and I think you mentioned a couple of times professionalism, and I I look at all of the statements that have come out and everything else, and they are all very professional, you know, there's a bit of rebuttal and everything else, but it's, like, done in such a way that, it is still professional and respectful as well, and I think that's important because at the end of the day, Jericho will play against the Aces a number of times
Yes.
this year, so, you don't want ill feeling either, especially because I've said this to you before, like, the WNBA from me looking inward is a sisterhood and where everyone supports everyone regardless of which team you play for, so, you definitely wouldn't want a situation like this to taint that at all because I think it's very important how close the WNBA players have been over the years and continue to be. Now, we have also had some rule changes that you wanted to talk about. Um, there's been a few, and some for the good.
I guess. I think they're for the good. It's been kind of fun looking at some of the rule changes that are happening with the WNBA. I think they're going to speed up the game, make it more fun, and some of it is kind of similar to the NBA in terms of like the coaches challenge, which I think is an amazing thing that they added to the game. Even watching the NBA finals the other day, seeing that rule come into play and how it can really change a game when you're talking about the last 2 minutes with a call that gives you an extra possession or keeps a person from fouling out of the game. So being able to challenge those situations will be great for the WNBA. And the one thing they're going to learn is the same thing they're learning with the NBA. You better be right. You lose a timeout, that player gets a foul. You want to make sure one, that you have players who are not going to have you contesting things knowing that they were fouling. There was a situation like that in the Lakers game the other day. Anthony Davis clearly fouled Jokic. Um, and was wasting valuable time. Just take the foul and keep it moving. Whereas on the women's side, I think it adds that element of engagement. It allows the fans to kind of see the replay too and to kind of come to their own conclusions. I love hearing the commentators go back and forth and you're hearing the different points of views that they have as well. Just makes the game fun. I think that's one of the bigger ones that they're having that's coming into play. What are your thoughts on that one?
I like it. I've liked it in the NBA for it's been there for a couple of years now. I think it is good, and you're right. It gets people talking, and we have analysts and commentators on TV who tend to have been coaches and players at some point in their life. So it's quite funny. You can tell who was the dogged '90s rough and tumble type player,
Yes.
and who's like the early 2000s softly softly player
Yeah.
because they bat. No, no, that's definitely not a foul. That is definitely a foul. And it is quite fun to get that. But I think as well, like it it engages fans because
Yes.
a lot of the time when you're at a sports arena, whatever sport it is, and there's a call by a referee, oh, that was terrible, ref. Da, 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 da." If you could go back and look at those replays, would it be so terrible? Because I would say referees, especially in the UK, not so much in the States, but in the UK, referees are abused at soccer matches. Like they are abused for 90 minutes. You don't get that so much in rugby. There's a respect thing between referees and players and referees and fans. In America, it's not such a big thing, I don't think, but I think it does help put a face to the referees, and you can see their thinking, and you don't hear what they're saying, but you can see what they're looking at and everything else. And
Yes.
I think that is good that that's shared on TV and on the big jumbotrons and stuff. So I think it's a good thing. I did see James Wade um, almost mess it up in Canada because he was like, "Oh, how does that rule work again?" So yeah, he had a wee consultation with one of the refs at one point, and I think we will get that as people kind of get used to using the rules.
Yes, and it gives the fans a chance to like when you see a coach on the sideline trying to figure it out, it allows the fans to kind of come in on that. They get a moment where one of the commentators is going to go through the rule, why it's important, what the pros and cons are, as well as their definition of whether it was a foul or a stop and play, etc. And you always have two differing people, like you said, and depending on what age they played in, it's hilarious to hear the commenter just talking about whether that's not enough to be a foul or that is clearly a foul. I think it just brings the fans into it. It also teaches them the game on a deeper level too.
Yeah, I think as well, like we do see kids, and kids, and in the states is different to the UK because the UK basically until you're 14, you don't actually play by the rules. Um, Whereas in the states, the rules are embedded at an early age, and I think that's the right way. Hence why maybe you have the NBA and WNBA because over here we have foreign players come in and play in our national leagues because we're not good enough. Because I don't think there's a lot of development issues in the UK basketball. But that being the case, um, I think this is a good thing. I think it engages fans, and I think it educates the younger fans so that when they go to games, they can be like, "Well, I'm not going to get away with that." So, and that I know why I'm not going to get away with that, rather than grandstanding and having a shouting match with a referee. So I think that's I used to do that quite a lot, but that's just
Same.
bad behaviour. But no, I think it's a good rule change. I think it's good that he brought in, and it's nice to see something being tested in the NBA first, and
Mhm.
then being used in the W
Yes.
rather than the other way around, which is kind of cool. Now, we are going to talk uh, negatively
Mhm.
for a moment. We're going to talk about the 43% of players that were drafted making WNBA teams. So just 15 players that were
Mhm.
drafted have made the final rosters for WNBA teams, which is horrendous. Now, to go along with this, because we can't name, we can't go through all of them, I will put the ones that were drafted and then waived, basically. One of them was an absolute shocker to me because I was kind of the opinion she's going to make it. Because again, going back to the Canada game and going back to James Wade's press conference, Kayana, she won the game. She won the game in the fourth quarter. She went mental. She went off on one, and she did an amazing job. And at the press conference afterwards, James Wade's asked the question of like, "You've got Kayana. She's going to be amazing this year. Like, what are you looking forward most to working with her and all this kind of stuff?" And then 4 days later, she's waived. And you're kinda like so you I find it difficult because and we know this happens in the NBA, but the NBA have, like, more rounds and, like, more players drafted and all this kind of thing, but the talent pool that the WNBA have to choose from is immense, and I have seen over the last few days a lot of hate towards the WNBA because why are you allowing all this talent to be drafted and then put on the waste heap almost? Now we know that that's not going to be the case because they will go and find other teams in other places, just not the WNBA. So they will get some development somewhere, and it's not as if it's not the last chance they'll ever get. However, I do see the point where that is a lot of talent that has been thrown away. Not just drafted players, but even players that were going into their second year, third year, fourth year. Like they are, I think the number one pick from 4 years ago gone, and it's crazy. Now you went through the scenario where you went to a team that had never kept a draft pick,
Yeah.
and you were fortunate enough after 2 years to unpack your bags. But I think the only answer to this, and Kathy spoke about this in that press conference, was we need more teams because we need to employ more players. Cheryl from the Lynx, the head coach there, she said the exact same thing. We need more teams so we can employ more people and not let these people just go off and hopefully stay in basketball in some way. But what's kind of the next step for these draftees that have been drafted and find themselves out of a team?
The first thing is being very realistic with what it is. It's very difficult, especially if you're not in that first round. You saw it dwindles down as you get to that second and that third round of making a team. And sometimes it's not even about abilities, it's about salary caps, it's about trades, future picks, the goals of the organization as a whole play into part. And sometimes, like you said, you have a draft pick from just 4 years ago who's no longer in the league. But there could be other factors. It could be things outside of just playing abilities. It could be, are you a cancer in the locker room? What's your attitude like? Are you a team player? Are you developing? 'Cause sometimes people get to the league and think they made it and they don't put in that time and effort necessary to continue growing their game. The other After you're realistic, I think the second thing is understanding all of your options. You do have the option to go overseas and play and develop. And overseas is so beautiful because it's an area where they really focus on fundamentals and developing players. So sometimes if you were drafted and you have an opportunity to go overseas, you definitely want to take that, go in there and learn some of the basics that we get away from in the US, not so much in the women's game, but as the game continues to grow, you do see athleticism taking precedence over fundamentals. So making sure you have those fundamentals in place, also understanding the game of basketball. Like, are you a coach on the floor? Do you know how to get people in the right positions? Have you grown with the game of basketball? Players are now like, I want to give an example. Jokic is the best example I can think of. Even Rui from LA, post player who can play like a guard, step out, hit the three. He can put the ball on the floor and passes to Anthony Davis under the basket. Whereas most big players, when you think of a Jokic, a AD, or a Rui, they're not great passers. Whereas in today's game, they are. They know how to dribble the ball. They know how to do every aspect of the game in an efficient manner. They make you play them from the rim all the way out on the floor. And I think in the women's game, you're going to see that happening more and more as well. We see it with certain teams, with the better teams. You're going to see it across the board. And I think some of those players coming from college, one of the biggest transitions for me was understanding that the college game and the program were so different. In college, you have a role and a responsibility based on what that college needs, but that may not be conducive to your overall development as a pro player. You may be 5'11 playing in the pros, playing in the post in college because you're at a D3 school. You're not going to do that in the pro, and not in the WNBA unless you're Latasha Byers. I mean, there's maybe one exception to that rule. So it's being realistic, understanding where you're trying to go and where that game is, and then putting yourself in a position to get there through trainers, overseas, whatever it is that you have to do, be willing to put in the time and invest in yourself to get there.
Yeah, we have seen players, drafted, go away. A couple of years later,
Come
they've
back.
been picked up by a team. So it's got to be heartbreaking because you've for some players, and this is a new thing now with nil that players can make money in college, and for a lot
Mm,
of them, they may look at like what's happened in this year's draft and be like, you know what, I might just stay an extra 2 years in
mhm,
college, get my nil money up, and then go to the draft. And then at least if I go to the draft and this happens, and at least I've got some cash behind me where I can kind of fall back on as well. So that is something
yeah,
that's obviously new, and not all players have access to it. In all fairness, but
mhm,
your top ones. But like Kathy says, more teams would mean more spots, meaning more players will be employed. And I think she knows that herself. She's not daft. She didn't come up the Clyde in a banana boat. It's like she knows that. So I think it's important as well that she acknowledges it. Like I think she must look at it, and she must every year now, she must, right, okay, this team have taken on 25, 30 players. Whew, they're gonna drop at least 10.
yeah,
And you're like, and some rosters, you're like, you've got a 15-person roster. Some teams only carry 12 players because of salary cap. So maybe when the next CBA comes round, that's something else that needs to get looked at so that we can pump up the salary cap so there's more room for more players as well. Because there's 142 spots, but they're not even all getting used because of
exactly.
salary caps and stuff. So one thing I will mention on contracts is the hardship contract. I learned about this earlier today. So we mentioned that Kate Lou Samuelson is pregnant and she's not going to be back for a while.
Mhm.
Her sister, Carly, who, by the way, plays for Great Britain, um, she is back with the Sparks. She was signed to a hardship contract. So you get a hardship contract if you have players that are going to be out for long periods of
Yes.
time. It has to be three players that are going to be out for a long period of time, and so Carly has been picked up by the LA Sparks, which I think is actually quite nice because, like, obviously it's her sister. She's one of those players that's not going to be around for a while. Or she's having a baby, so kind of doubly nice for her. One, her sister's having a baby, and she gets a contract, which is got to be kind of nice. But and it's nice to see Carly back in the WNBA because I don't. I think it's 2021 was the
Mhm.
last time she played. So it's nice to see her back. But the hardship contract, that actually think that's quite a good idea.
Mhm.
When I started reading through the contract and its terms, I was kind of like, actually, like, I don't think that is in any other sports league.
I'm not sure on that one. I actually don't know if it
Mm.
exists in other leagues, but I do know it is an amazing idea, especially when you have several injuries that can affect a team. It affects so many different things. And if you got players out for extended periods of time, I think having a hardship is something that helps you out in the long term, especially in a league where you have pregnancies on top of injuries that can happen to a team. Can you imagine a team that has more than one pregnancy plus a player that may have an ACL or a long term injury? I think having that hardship contract at least allows them some breathing room until they can get their team back, to where it needs to be.
I did look at the NBA. The closest they come is a 10-day contract,
Mhm.
where they can sign players and stuff, but, that's, like, the closest they can come, but I read through it and I was like, because 'cause I'd seen it mentioned in previous years, but never really looked into it, but when I looked into it, I was like, "Actually, that's such a actually good idea," so
Yeah.
well done to the WNBA for coming up with that one, or WNBAPA, whichever came up with that one, well done. Now the tip off is tonight, Michelle. What are we looking forward to most about this season?
Wow. Um, it's the hype for me. I'm looking forward to all the hype. I think, one of the best games that's gonna be on is, New York is playing the Washington Mystics. That will be an extremely big challenge for them. It'll be a great opportunity as well because you got Deladon back saying she's feeling better than ever. You got one of the best backcourts with Washington, with Shakira. And then you also have New York, who has three great players that they've added to their team. They're looking like they could actually be contending for a WNBA championship. The question remains, are they able to put all those pieces together? And you have 3 players that haven't played together as well. So it'll be interesting to see those 3 players on the court together against a formidable opponent who also could be a WNBA championship contender in the Washington Mystics. You got a great coach in in that organization, so you're gonna see a lot of different components at play. I am interested to see the energy behind them, how they mesh on both teams, because at the beginning of the season, that usually takes a minute, and sometimes it doesn't. So I'll tell people this: don't count out the young team. At the same time, experience has value. So it will be a great opportunity to see two really good teams go at it and get a look at what the WNBA season could look like this summer.
Yeah, this this summer is going to be crazy, with the level, and we talked about this like 2 minutes ago with players being waived because there's not enough space because there's so much talent already there, and
Yeah.
because there's so much talent there, it makes people have this year I think for the first time talked about WNBA super teams,
Mhm.
so Aces, Liberty, but then you look at other teams like Phoenix, like
Yes.
technically could be classed as nearly a super team, Connecticut Sun.
Yes.
So there is other teams, and then there's the young upstarts.
Right.
Probably the Chicago Sky,
Um,
probably one of those.
Chicago and
And
Atlanta.
Atlanta, yes. No, a very good teams. A lot of great basketball to look forward to. We've got All Star in July, and Commissioner's Cup, I think, has become pivotal in
Mhm,
bringing competition to the league. And in terms of bringing competition to the league, what I'm talking about is that every game matters. And each team is going out from game one of the season right the way through. Because even when you're done with the Commissioner's Cup, you're then fighting for your playoff spots as well. So I think that has really alleviated probably the only league in the world that has a draft where, you know, there's no tanking because every game means something, and it's so good for the fans
mm.
because I think we as fans then get like every game is competitive. Every game has been fought for. You're not getting massive blowouts because every game is close, and that makes for exciting basketball. So I'm looking forward to the Commissioner's Cup this year. I think that will be very interesting to see who gets there. The only other thing that I'm looking forward to before we move on to predictions is Britney's back.
Mhm.
That is good. Like, the roof in Phoenix is gonna be blown off.
It should be blown off. I think that roof is gonna extend beyond Phoenix. When she comes out to LA to play, they're gonna go nuts. Every arena she enters this year, they're going to give her her flowers and her due as they should. I think even globally, when you think about people who are watching, who get the treat of seeing her on the basketball court again, they are going to love it and enjoy every moment of what she brings to the women's game.
I think it's gonna be amazing. So happy she's home. We've seen her at the Super Bowl. We've seen her out and about with her
Yes.
wife. I think there's some pictures with her Diana and her wife, and you know, and I think it's important that we see that smile. Like that is right now, that's like the $1 billion smile because
Yeah.
that is the one where, yeah, I've been through something absolutely horrendous, but this is how I've come out the other side. Because one thing I was worried about, and I think a lot of people would have been,
Mhm.
probably her family and friends as well, is mentally, how
Yes.
strong is she gonna come back? Yes, we know she's strong,
Mhm.
but that that situation takes a toll, and I'm so happy that, like, even when she came off that plane, like, the smile was there, and we've seen that, and I think I've seen a couple of comments and stuff, and, like, she is just ready to go, like, she's just so ready for it, and I think that's so important, and the fans in Phoenix, yeah, I think they're really gonna I think and the fans around the league, in all fairness, I think will give her her flowers, and then the whistle will go and things will change. But I think initially, I think it's so nice to have her back, um, and probably for her, she probably just wants to get back to normal. Like she probably just wants to, yeah, thanks for my flowers, right? I want to play now. Like this is what I've been waiting for. So let's just
Yes.
go play.
Yes. I'm really excited to see. I feel like we're already seeing it, that she has a sense of urgency with the memoir that's coming out, the Met Gala appearance, the different things that she's doing in terms of social advocacy across the board for women, across the board for other people who are still stuck in other countries being held. I think we're going to see a sense of urgency in basketball become that haven where she can release a lot of that stress and be surrounded by people who love and care about her at the same time. But I also go, I wouldn't want to be on the other side, okay? I would not want to be her opponent. Not this year, baby. Not this year. I just feel like she's going to let it all out on the court, and that's a safe space to do so while
Yeah.
inspiring millions.
Yes, definitely, and it's gonna be interesting to see how things play out in Phoenix, because obviously they've a lot of roster changes, but starting five wise, actually not too bad. Minus Skylar, who's obviously off having a baby, so yeah, it's it's gonna be fun. Now predictions. Let's go for Commissioners Cup finalists first. Who you got for that?
I'm not gonna say who I got, but who I wanna see. I wanna see this young team in New York. I really wanna see them in the finals going against a veteran team. I don't care who it is. But to see that young versus that new energy, I think it'll be fun, different styles of play, it's a different mental game that we'll be watching. I think that's fun for the league. It gets to showcase, a variety of talent across the board. So I love to see New York. versus whoever, whether that's Washington. We talked about Chicago. It could be two teams that we weren't expecting that could be in that spot, or it could be two teams that we do expect. At the end of the day, I'm always cheering for the Aces to get another one. Always. Period. I'm biased and I don't care. But I need them to win and then they can play New York. Okay.
Okay. So I am gonna go with New York as well. Um, but I'm also gonna go with Phoenix.
Okay.
I think Phoenix, New York, and I think Phoenix wins it.
Okay.
I think
All
Phoenix
right.
wins it. What about the finals then? We'll go finals, long distance, end of the season. Who's winning that final game of the season?
I could totally see that being Phoenix and LA and not LA, Vegas at the end of the season, but I'm pulling that Vegas pulls it out. Looking at the numbers, looking at the strategy in terms of what they have to offer, they do have a super team. And when you look at all the spots, including 3 reserve spots, I would say they're about 8, 9 deep in terms of I don't know if other teams have the depth that they have, whether they have the coaching experience from someone like a Becky Hammon, birthed from Popovich. I just don't know, but I do think it'll be interesting to see how it kinda transpires over the entire summer. It's gonna be a lot of different things. You got injuries, you have pregnancies, you have, fines, suspensions. There are gonna be so many different things that come into play that change this league up a little bit, and I'll be honest, this is probably one of the strongest seasons where I've seen everyone from that 3 through that 6, 7 spot. It's gonna be a dog fight, so it's gonna be a ton of fun to watch.
Yeah, and that level of competition is just upped because of the Commissioner's Cup, because you're fighting every game. I think the finals will be between the Aces and Liberty. You know,
Really?
you look anywhere in social media, that tends to be the
Okay,
theory.
okay.
The only thing, and you mentioned it before with the Liberty, is they haven't all played together. This is kind of a new team coming together. So,
That's it?
well, you've got Vandersloot and Dawson. They're obviously coming back together. But
Oh,
then you've got Candace on the other side, and I think
it
that matchup would just be immense.
it will be, but I think 2 other things that I'm gonna say why I'm not putting them in the finals. Not only have they not played together yet, they're still a relatively young team, number 2. Number 3, they've never played in the pro game together, and that is a difference. So I think there will be a learning curve. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. I think that fourth thing is when you're looking at the experience of players who know all those rules and all those tricks that are different from college to the pro, that becomes an advantage. And I think the advantage of teams who've been there before, even when you look at like a Phoenix, they've been there before, they know what it takes, they understand that it's a much shorter season as well. So I think all of those things are going to come into play. And one of the things I'm going to be looking at is can those young players hold up over a condensed season that is much faster than the college game, where you're not necessarily the strongest person in your conference and most of those teams are not as good? Every team out every night is going to be good. And I think that's going to be the difference for New York.
One of the biggest players waived this year, Dede Richards from the
Mhm.
Liberty. I see that as a mistake. I I genuinely see, and I'd love the Aces to go and say, "Oh well, we have 3 spots. Let's just use one of them right now, and we'll just take Dede right now."
I wouldn't be shocked to see a team pick her up. Not at
Oh,
all. I think we'll see some of those players that maybe have been dropped. They may get picked up by other teams over the next couple of days, but we'll see. And then you also have the midseason trades and pickups that happen. So it's like I said, this summer is going to be anybody's game. Just be prepared for an exciting, surprise filled summer.
now what game are you looking forward to this week?
Oh, definitely the Mystics and the New York Liberty.
I have went with Chicago and Phoenix.
Ooh, that's a good one too.
Brittany's first home game back
Yes.
in Phoenix. Yeah, she'll played in LA a couple of nights before, but and the good thing is, not only is it being televised in the UK, so people can watch it on
Okay.
Sky Sports in the UK, we also have before that game the Fever and the Liberty that same day. I don't think that one's on TV, but you can still watch it on League Pass as well, which is pretty awesome. So that's the game I'm looking forward to. Brittany, without a doubt, is the reason behind that because I think she is going to have an awesome time this year. Um,
Does she
yeah,
dunk? Does she dunk on her first game back?
yeah, like she does. Like I just think
Okay.
I think she goes for 50. I'm
50?
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say,
Um,
I'm finna bet on this.
yeah, maybe we should. I've said that now. Probably should. But no, we are going to be here all season long. Now, we made an announcement a few weeks ago that we were bringing two brand new podcasts dedicated to two WNBA teams to Across the Pond Sports Network. We have done that. The first one went out earlier today, Across the Pond Liberty with Stacia and with Kirsten. They put out their first episode today, so you can grab that. The Aces, Across the Pond Aces podcast, that will be out in the next few days as well. Um, we are ramping up our WNBA coverage because this league is exciting and everyone wants in on it. And we want to make sure we can give people a place where they can go and get this coverage. So we are happy to bring this to you. And we're hopefully as well, the more we build a relationship with the WNBA and we get more access, meaning we can give you even more coverage and closer to the action as we go as well. So do join myself and Michelle every week for the WNBA. But don't forget, if you are a fan of either the Liberty or Aces, or you just want to check out and see what's going on, you can check those feeds as well. We'll put the links in our social media for you. We have also changed our social media. So Across the Pond WNBA is now across TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, like all these places. I don't even know half of them because I'm old, but um, they are there um, for you to follow, and we'll be bringing you news and some extra videos and some extra content throughout the season as well. So for just now, Michelle, first episode of the new season in the books, and it's game time.
Game time, baby. Bring it.